Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Lost and Found with Frankie. And today I have my friend Ruby on as we talk about her story and journey with grief, changes in family dynamics and how that can affect you, and the real importance of not losing hope. So, settle in and I hope you enjoy our lovely conversation. Hello, and welcome to Lost and Found with Frankie, a podcast for young adults and teens who are just trying to figure out who they are whilst dealing with one of life's most devastating experiences, grief. I'm Frankie, and 10 years ago, when I was 13 years old, I lost my eldest brother, Matt. Like you're probably feeling now, I felt lost, alone, angry, and completely overwhelmed with sadness, and was just craving a space where I could go and feel comforted and understood. So this podcast is my way of creating that space for you, whilst opening up the taboo topic of grief, which so many of us experience. So if you're feeling lost on your journey with grief, hi, and welcome to this safe space. Thank you so much for being here with me today. You are not alone, and I hope that this podcast brings whatever it is that you're seeking on your journey. So let's get into it. Hello, Ruby. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on. It means the world, and I'm really excited. Not excited, that's the wrong word, but I'm looking forward to you sharing your story and like your mindset around grief. I think is just really powerful. And speaking to you as someone who's been grieving for a long time has been a really special experience for me, for sure.
Likewise.
Because it's,
definitely.
Anyway, that was a bit of a long
Thank you
history.
so much for having me. I'm happy to be here. I feel like the reasons we're here aren't too happy.
Not really, no.
But all things considered, I'm really happy to be here. So thank you so much.
It's coming on, and like a positive to come out of like
Exactly.
a negative, I guess. I feel like I say that all the time.
To talk.
Yeah.
And have these conversations.
100%. So we met actually through, I guess, like Millie, who's been on,
Yeah.
a friend of mine, basically. We sort of just like reached out to each other and we went for a drink. And to be honest, it was probably one of the best drinks. Well,
It was such a good beer. No,
it was such a good beer.
Really
That beer was unreal.
No, it was so nice. It was just one of those evenings where I just feel like we didn't draw breath for like 3 hours and just like darted across hundreds of different topics of conversation. And it was so nice.
And it was just sort of an experience I've never really had before. It was really comforting, and just speaking to someone who we have had such different experiences, but speaking to someone who can relate on a level that's different.
There's such different experiences, but there's definitely a lot of common ground to be found.
100%.
Just having those chats about like the weirdness of grief and not just the sadness of it as well, and like laughing about things as well, which is such a big way that I cope.
You have to sometimes, dude. But no, it was like the best. Best again is the wrong word. It was like, a really nice, special drink.
It was so nice.
And then a start to like a new friendship that I am just, honestly, I'm so beyond excited for.
Yeah, me too. I'm so happy to be here.
And yeah, you literally wouldn't be able to get a word in edgeways between us. So
I know, good episode content.
Also, I was kind of thinking, remember when we were leaving that drink, I was like, we should have just recorded that whole conversation. I mean, it would have been a 3-hour episode, but
yeah,
it was perfect.
Yeah, that was great. Well, we basically just had that on the train as well.
I know. This is the problem.
Yeah, we're just going to be repeating ourselves.
Yeah. Anyway. So we are here, obviously, with the big old heavy topic of grief and loss. So let's give everyone a bit of context of your story. So
probably relevant. So it's currently Remembrance Sunday. So November the 10th.
Yeah.
And my dad died in January this year. So coming up to the dreaded 1-year mark in a few months, like Christmas, New Year, January, Dad's birthday. Just a nice mixture of dates, which will be, I'm just trying to like cross that bridge when I come to it. Just not think about it too much right now. But yeah, obviously every death is kind of unique to its own circumstances and, very exceptional. And obviously awful in every scenario. But in terms of talking about kind of my grief and how that it's been affected this last year, I think it's necessary to contextualize sort of the circumstances around what happened when he died, because that had such a big impact on how I process, definitely, maybe not so much now, but definitely the first few months. So yeah, my dad was a tennis journalist. So he traveled the world a lot following like the Grand Slams and other tennis tournaments and stuff. And he died very unexpectedly in January in Australia, covering the Australian Open. So obviously I was in so much shock anyway, but the kind of circumstances around him being halfway across the world and on the job, we joke about how it was he was such an understated, humble guy. And it was such an uncharacteristically attention-seeking way for him to go, because he was like working in the media where obviously everyone talks in the media. And he was in Australia, halfway across the world from his home and his family. And obviously that came with a whole load of logistical complications, getting him back and everything. But
that's something people don't don't factor in to loss sometimes. Is like
the admin,
logistics,
bureaucracy behind that. I mean, my mum's like absolute Wonder Woman. She's amazing. She was amazing with all of that stuff. So we kind of got sheltered from all of the administration behind it. But it also came with so many emotional complications, because
I can imagine
it was crazy. So he was big on Twitter, which is kind of lame. And
it's not lame.
And apparently the done thing when someone dies that's big on Twitter is to post a tweet to sort of announce it. So on the day that he died, which was the 17th of January, it's actually weird though, because he died in the early hours of the morning on the 17th of January. I told you this when I saw you, but because of the time difference, we found out on the 16th of January. So like,
you have like two
double whammy. But I mean, you know, the outcome's still the same. He's still, but so we did this tweet and I was just so in shock anyway, like really not emotional. Like I don't think I cried for like 2 weeks.
That's not how you found out.
No. We found out separately, but we did this tweet and it went like completely viral, and it was like top 3 trending in the UK on the day. As a result, there was this huge outpouring of love and tributes and affection and condolences and all of that. And I think that just massively, obviously, when you're in that grief bubble anyway, at the beginning, when everyone's like sending you flowers and messaging you all the time, I think that massively just added to the cushioning of being so cocooned by the shock, but also the love and affection and like, oh my God, everyone cares so much. It's so nice. And because it obviously emotionally hadn't sunk in at all, I was just like, it was, I mean, compared to the following months, like, it was so surreal, but it wasn't obviously like, it was obviously so awful. And there's a lot of stuff that happened during that month that then affected me way later on. But because I wasn't emotional about it, and I was like, oh yeah, it's so nice, everyone's messaging all the time. Like, it's I think that just played a huge part in it not sinking in for ages and kind of the shock. And then because
you had an extra cushioning from like strangers that you didn't even know of outpouring love and like condolences to you, not just like the people around you and your family and friends who love you. It was like this extended, you had like a big old grief bubble.
Exactly. And I think because obviously it's different in every culture and country and religion and stuff, but typically I think in the UK, the kind of protocol when someone dies with all those awful words that we know all too well, like autopsy and body and cremation.
Cremation is, I hate it. Anyway.
That normally takes like 6 weeks, a month to 2 months. But because he was away, that process was so drawn out. So it just meant the grief bubble lasted longer, I think, for me anyway. I obviously can't speak on behalf of my family, but and then it just meant when that all died down, it all just came crashing down. And
do you think you felt more, you felt that more maybe because the grief bubble was so big?
Yeah.
That maybe it felt more lonely when it...
Yeah, I don't know, because it's kind of, it's the only experience I've had, so I can't compare it.
Yeah.
But what was a big thing as well was because he travelled so much since we were born. So this sounds really savage, but because he was away so much, he wasn't like in the army going away for like 9 months at a time, but it was just normal for him to not be around sometimes. So I've never, because I've just been so used to him being away, I've never really like missed him before, because it's like, oh, you know, dad's away, he'll be back in a few weeks, whatever. And so it then took quite a long time for me to start like missing him. And then when I started missing him, and then that coupled with the realization that, oh shit, he's actually not coming back, like this feeling's not going anywhere, that was also when it all came crashing down as well. But I mean, timelines wise, like it's all a blur. I had no idea kind of when that hit, but that was a big thing as well, because it was just like, you know, going home, him not being there, that's kind of, you know, I'm used to that. Like it wasn't like he would come home at 6 p.m. every day after work and he would turn and be like, dad's home. It wasn't like that. So, but now it's just like, oh, he's still not back.
Yeah.
Like, where is he? But obviously you adjust to that. And yeah, so that's kind of a bit of context about what happened. And yeah, but obviously very sad.
I didn't even think about how, with that like routine of his job, that adds another layer, as you just said, of like, it was almost like you were used to it, and then it must have felt like, you probably don't know when, but it got to a point where it was like, okay,
yeah, and
this is like the longest you've been away anyway. Before. Yeah.
So in my head at the beginning, I was like, well, I'm not seeing him anyway. It's fine. Like my daily routine is kind of the same as it was, which I think is sort of just probably a coping mechanism of me telling myself that, like, it's fine. Yeah. Life can just carry on as normal. And then obviously you've got this big gaping hole in your life that's not, you know, not going to get filled. And that, so that, I guess that's definitely been a big way that it kind of manifested in the first few months. But I remember at the time, it's weird talking about it now, obviously I'm so new to grief in the scheme of a lifetime, and the only time I really have that hindsight on, which obviously you have over the course of 10 years, is probably the first few months I have hindsight. And at the time I think my friends probably would leave me and be like, Ruby's amazing, like, or be like, Ruby's a psychopath and doesn't care that her dad's died, because I genuinely was fine. But at the time I was having like really bad nightmares literally every single night for like 3 months.
What, straight after?
Yeah, and I think it was because I was fine in the day.
It's almost like your nightmare,
and my subconscious was being
where
like,
your darkness went.
Just so you know, your dad's died. Like, remember that. And then I'd wake up and then live a normal day and be like, oh, okay, it's fine. And then I'd go to sleep, and then it kind of, But those
so you were probably just numb.
Yeah.
When you look back now, you probably weren't fine. You were just like,
I'm making it sound like it was a walk in the park. Like, obviously it was awful, but as in relative to kind of the emotions that followed that, I was 100%. So numb. But I don't think I realized I was numb. I think I just thought, oh, this is grief. Like, it's really sad my dad's dead, but like I'm gonna look after myself, do a face mask, and I'll be fine. And that's fine.
Self-care Sunday.
Yeah, literally. I thought when people said like, look after yourself, I just thought, oh, okay, watching a film with my friends and like going on a walk. I'm really good at this grief thing. Yeah. And then a few months later, obviously humbled.
But it is like, I think as well with sudden loss, like that's obviously, I had that with that. And it is that thing of just like when I would tell people, like as I said with Millie, and in our conversation, I'm pretty sure I was like smiling when I told her Matt died. It's just not normal. Well, is it normal? What's normal? I don't know. But like, that's like
about like when you put it on Snapchat, like no replies.
Yeah, brother died. Brother died. Like in a flash, you're gone. It's like
in a flash, you're gone.
But I was just, you're just completely numb.
Yeah.
So that's like your body and brain are just in a state of shock.
I mean, no one at any age is prepared. Like, no one can prepare you for death anyway. But speaking from two people that have experienced sudden death, I can't even imagine being 13 and trying to like navigate school and like I was 22, I'm 23 now, but I still find it like people are so weird about death. And I completely relate because I was like that. I was like treading on eggshells whenever I was around someone that had gone through grief or whatever, really conscious of upsetting them or whatever, which is in hindsight such a sort of narcissistic way of looking at it. Like I'm not going to upset them. It's the fact that their loved ones died is probably
it's like you're not reminding me of them
because they're always on your mind.
Yeah,
but the fact you were 13 and having to navigate like teenagers. How was it?
Horrible. But weirdly, I look back now and like, I think like when we were talking about, you know, like the grief bubble and like how you're fine but not fine. And there's obviously horrible parts that come along with that.
Yeah.
But I think because of my age, I think it lasted a lot longer for me because my brain was like still developing. And then this massive thing. Yeah, exactly. So I think it like lasted longer. And then at that age, no one around me knew what to do, knew how to help. So like, it was just a bit of a shit show really. But I mean, I think I was numb for so long. Honestly, probably like 2-3 years.
Yeah.
Till I hit like 16, where I was then starting to mature and really like actually deep things. Like up until that point, I think it was just so matter of fact for me. Like, yeah, like my brother's dead.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the matron and not milk the fact that school's letting me go to matron and not go to classes, obviously.
Yeah.
My brother's dead.
Yeah.
And then people be like, I can't be using your brother. And I'd be like,
what?
I will.
Use it.
I'm
use
like,
that card.
Yeah, I just think different ages bring different things.
Complications. And I've had such a big year. Like this year was always going to be big in the sense of Dad conveniently died during my university finals. So I had that. And then obviously like applying to jobs. This was always going to be such a transitional year for me anyway. And having the sort of all of those cliche, like complicated problems that come with being in your early 20s and then suddenly having to cope with grief on top of that has been, it's been a challenge for sure.
Yeah, huge year. And it is that like, it's almost like a transitional year of like going from a path that you've been on, like school, uni. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, this is like my year of change. And then this other massive change has just come and hit you in the face. And it's like, I wasn't expecting
everyone, when they leave uni, maybe not everyone, but it's very common to feel like really existential.
Yeah.
What am I doing with my life? Where do I want my life to go? How do I want to spend the next few years? What's important to me? But that existentialism combined with the existentialism you feel faced with when you're faced with mortality of like, what is life? We're all going to die.
It ends.
Nothing matters, but also everything matters. That combination of kind of having to navigate what you want from your life, but also the complexities of not really knowing what life is anymore. I think that's such a big thing that I definitely didn't appreciate before. Well, I didn't appreciate any of it before. We kind of have to learn it all the hard way, but was when, again, can only speak from someone who's experienced sudden death, but when that your life changes in a split second, you're like really scared of the world and your view of the world is completely different. And obviously your brain is completely rewired and there are thousands and thousands of ripple effects of that loss and everything. But one of them for me has been the way that I now like catastrophize everything. And I was so blissfully ignorant before my dad died. Obviously I knew rationally that we all die and, you know, bad things happen to people, but you kind of don't think it's ever going to happen to you.
And you don't approach it because it hasn't happened to you. You sort of like push it away because you're like, it's too scary.
Yeah, I just thought we're all going to live long, happy lives and all die when we're 85 and ready. And then for this to happen, I'm so hyper aware of time, so hyper aware of mortality.
Goodbyes.
Like, if someone doesn't answer the phone, I'm like, they're dead. That's another one.
Or if you get a phone call like late at night or like really early in the morning Like I've actually had to have words with like my mum about this.
Yeah.
It can happen. Text me first.
I have a friend who's going to know who she is listening to it, but she has this really annoying habit of texting me and just saying, Ruby. And I'm like, why are you trying to give me a panic attack, right?
I don't need it.
And I've told her off so many times, but I think she's stopped doing it. I'm like, what's going on? Are you okay? What's happened? Obviously, in my new brain, I'm like, everyone in the whole world has died that I love.
Yeah.
And then she'll be like, what's the plan on Sunday? Oh,
that didn't need
so much anxiety.
No, it's just not.
But obviously, I didn't think like that before this year.
No,
but I think as well.
Also, you can't be angry. You're like, you can't view that negatively.
No,
because no one does until you grieve and lose someone. Everyone's in this ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
Why would you not be? Why would you put yourself in a grieving state before you have to?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like so normal, but God, it shifts your mindset.
Don't know any different.
No.
But I think as well, maybe I'm just like a chronic optimist, but the way that it's, you can look at it twofold, the way that it's changed my perception of life and time in the sense of I'm now much more aware in a bit of a scary way, and that I would obviously way rather be blissfully ignorant, but also that powerful perspective that you get with it is something that I'm not happy about the reasons why I have that perspective, but I'm so happy that I have it. And just, I've never hugely been one to like sweat the small stuff anyway, but especially now, just feel like I'm much more just, I don't know, chilled and understanding and be, just be kind, and you never know what someone's going through. And
And grief is twofold, and that's
it's a millionfold.
It's a millionfold.
Yeah.
But in that sense, as you've just said it, that's actually quite a nice thing. Sometimes, not everyone has this, but I've definitely found it twofold of like, it's scary because you look at life like it's not promised to anyone, blah, blah. But then the other twofold is like, exactly, you don't sweat the small stuff. You worry about what matters. You
treasure your
relationships. You make more time for your loved ones. And that's a nice thing that comes out of it, because then you cherish that more, and then you make more space for it, so that hopefully then in the future you have like more memories with everyone else, sort of. Yeah. And it sort of teaches you that lesson of like, okay, I know it's scary, but a positive can come out of like cherish those you do have still around.
I think there's always good that can be found within the
silver lining.
Sadness. But again, there's always sadness that can be found within the good. And
also, take me back. I'd always rather not the silver lining. Yeah. I'd always rather go back. Give me the person back. Yeah, I'd always rather that.
But obviously you can't change it. And it's a good old perspective to have, but one that you kind of wish you didn't have. But it's happened.
I know. And it's really daunting. It's a really, like, I feel like when we met up for a drink, something I found, I like left feeling like really overwhelmed that like how far I am into my grief. If that makes sense. I was so beyond sad for you, which I think is why I was also really emotional, but it was also really overwhelming that I was now someone giving that advice and trying to give the positives that come from this negative and give a perspective on where you might be all those years later, which was like really like,
I imagine that must have been really nostalgic, but
it was really
like
weird,
in a heavy way, but
also not like, it was nice to be able to be that person.
I've heard that a lot. Obviously I'm in that year period, but I've heard that the passing of time can be really difficult for obviously so many reasons. It's good in the sense of like you've every day that goes on you learn how to deal with it better, but also you're further away from who you were when you knew Matt. And I cherish that at the beginning. Like I would always just slot into conversation and be like, I was just speaking to Dad the other day about this actually. And now I can't say that anymore because it's like a year ago now. I can't to be fair, I say the other day about anything.
Yeah, so do I.
But now.
Yeah.
But so what I was just talking to him the other month, or like it was only a few weeks ago that I was talking to him, and now, you know, it's weird that they're kind of like, that's not what you were saying you're talking about at the time, but
no, but it is
they're
a little
stopping
bit
time, and you've kind of developed so much since then.
Yeah.
And I think what I find so weird is that obviously grief changes you so much and shapes you so differently. And I feel like obviously I'm still the same person, but I have changed a lot since my dad died for better. I'm much sadder than I was, obviously, and that kind of thing. But I'm also, I feel like I'm, probably a bit of a better person. But I can't really remember who I was before it happened. But that's crazy because this version of myself that I am now, my dad's never met. My dad doesn't know my grief life. But obviously I wouldn't have it if he did know it. So it's weird that I can't remember like who I was when he was alive. But I feel like that is, well, hopefully something that time helps with. You kind of, as you just readjust more to this new reality, you can kind of, the weight of those memories get a bit lighter. And
also you're still like, what, only 10 months?
Yeah, 10 and a half. Coming up to 11. So yeah,
it's like,
I'm actually really interested in looking back on this and like seeing the stuff I've come out with today. And I might look back on it and be like, what are you talking about? I'll probably be completely blackout because they say in the first year it's like,
I know, oh my God, I don't remember a thing.
Yeah.
But no, I do. That's not true. You do, but it's just like all a blur with like these little like flashy bits.
Yeah.
Maybe this will be
really prominent moments. Yeah, I think it will.
So, but yeah, like I think
good reasons.
Yeah, and you looking at that year, like this year that you've had, like I feel like I was saying this to you on the train, wasn't I? Like I feel like you've got to a point that like took me years to get to. But I think that's potentially like an age thing.
I think firstly, such a grief cliche, but there's just no comparison.
Oh, you cannot compare.
As in, firstly, the situations and the ages and the contexts are completely different, and the people. But also, like, if that is something you feel, you were 13, like, what the hell are you meant to do with that? I feel, no one can equip you or prepare you for what's going to happen. But at least with being 22, I kind of had, even just 1% more life experience than I did when I was 13. So.
Yeah, but that just shows, I guess, that like, this is why grief is so tricky and why there's no rule book to grief, because everyone is different. Every loss is different. Every relationship is different.
Yeah, no. And that was made so apparent to me, even from the beginning, just from the way that my brothers and I were at the beginning. Like, we obviously have all lost, my mum lost her husband, but we all lost the same person. We all lost our dad, but we grieve so differently. And, that's also another huge complication of grief that is really difficult to navigate. It's kind of doing it at different times. I had this sort of, I don't even know if they know this, but I had this like incessant need to know how they were doing. And if anyone said to me, how are they? How's your brother? Whatever. I'd get really emotional if I didn't know, because I'd feel like I just want to have some kind of grasp of it, but also
confirmation.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, we're living different lives. We're at completely different stages of life. We're completely different people. We had different relationships with him. It's completely pointless trying to not keep tabs on it, but just, I don't know.
It makes sense from like an emotional perspective.
Yeah.
Of like, wanting to always know how they are. I wonder if like they felt the same about you.
Yeah. Yeah, probably not. No, I'm joking. No.
I'm sure you'd be surprised. Like,
yeah, no, definitely. Like, you become this unit.
Oh my God,
sure you and your siblings.
Again, like, all grieved so differently.
Yeah.
But it's whatever just gets you through. Like, that's it. And then, like, it's like, you just kind of keep that head above the water and just, as I always say, just like take it day by day. And if you do it differently, you do it differently. And sometimes that can be really tricky. If you're doing it very differently, it can be difficult to understand why you're both doing it so differently.
Yeah.
And then I found like sometimes I'd start to judge myself how I was grieving and be like, oh, like, why am I not like that? Why am I not like this? And then slowly just realize, but that's just that's what worked for me.
Yeah.
And for me, it was just talking and crying and being super open.
Oh, that's great.
But yeah, great for me. Sometimes not great for other people.
Yeah.
They're probably like,
no,
got it. You're grieving.
I'm like a bit of a broken record, I think, when it comes to grief. It just...
See, I personally love it. I'm so
sorry. Why
we get along so well. But yeah, I mean, the lessons that come out of grief are just crazy. There's a million and one crazy things that come out of it. And that change in family dynamic is a big one. And how different. It's also something that's like, that's another thing I never thought. Like I would have thought we just all would grieve the same because we lost the same person before any of us had ever lost anyone. I was always like, oh, we're losing the same person. It's like, yeah, we're all going to feel the same. And it's like, no, like, that's not at all how it is, which is interesting.
It's incredibly unpredictable.
Yeah.
And I think there's no point in, comparing how you're all reacting to it and judging each other. I think obviously emotions run so high, so it's so easy to kind of not like take out on the ones you love because you obviously don't want to do that. But
no, sometimes you can't help it because sometimes they're the only one that know what you get.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. I think there's just such a misunderstanding of grief in general, and I think that's something that, because I remember kind of how I was when it came to death and grief and how weird I was about it before. And now I've been on kind of the receiving end of people being really uncomfortable around it. I now know that is kind of going off topic, but that kind of makes it all a bit more isolating because obviously, people want different things and grieve so differently. It might be someone's worst nightmare for you to just bring up their loved one, and it's not, there's such an element of just reading the room. If you don't know them all, and it's just not appropriate at that time, then fine. But I think what I was thinking about this the other day, and I think what is so wildly misunderstood about grief is that, especially from what I thought it kind of was before, is as a society, we kind of have the whole thing nailed of it's really sad to have a loved one die. The reality, you're never going to see them again and that they no longer exist. You don't need to go through grief or go through a loss to know that. Hence people saying sorry for your loss and being upset for you. But whilst that is the crux of grief and the reason why we're grieving and mourning that person is a huge part of it. And in my experience, probably one of the most painful parts of it. There's so much more to grief than that. And it's the thousands of ripple effects that loss has and the way that it affects, your brain is completely rewired, and the way that rewiring affects everything in your day-to-day life. And obviously, again, I'm only speaking for someone that's in the first year, and in time you adjust and you adapt and the pain's still the same. But I think it's not just, I'm sorry for your loss, but it's also I'm sorry that you now have to live a life with grief. And I think that the complexities and the weirdness that comes with grief is the thing that's so wildly misunderstood and not spoken about. All of the thousands and thousands of ripple effects. And I think just by talking about it and having, if you feel able, and having these conversations, generally just increasing people's understanding of it, and will just help us. I sound like I'm doing a presidential speech. Will help us as a country, help us as a society. Just,
I agree.
Learn how to support people going through what is one of the worst things you can go through.
Yeah.
And understanding that it's so much more than just missing someone. And obviously that's a huge part of it. But
it's so true, because you miss them, you're sad. They're the center. Missing, sad, heartbreak, heartache,
Yeah.
But then there's like anger, guilt, jealousy, I had like worst possible case scenario, as we just spoke about. Like,
things,
like, oh, someone's called me, cool, they're dead. Oh, I didn't say bye to them, they're gonna die. That shouldn't be normal. But in a grief
and
brain,
also like for me as well, the brain fog I get is something that I definitely wouldn't have even thought about last year. Like I mind blank all the time, and I find grief really fascinating just as a concept and the psychology of it, because it's so complex, and that the way that it affects a part of your brain that like affects your memory, affects the way you process things, and then you're kind of, after a set amount of time, you're kind of expected to just live your life as normal and just go back to work and, you know, complete your degree or whatever stage of life you're in.
That's what needs to change. And I think what is misunderstood about that aspect of grief's not linear, you don't just get over it after a year or two. I think what's misunderstood in society and from people that haven't grieved is that then, oh, okay, you want like special treatment for the rest of your life. And it's like, no, like, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying once you go through a monumental thing like that completely changes the way that your brain is wired, the way that your heart is wired, it's not about, I need this, so give it to me always. It's just acknowledgement of just
understanding around it and not acknowledging it.
Yeah. And acknowledging that there's so many different avenues to grief. So I might not always just be sad. Like there's days when I'm just going to be like numb walking. That's what I have, is like walking in the woods, like brain fog, not a clue what's going on. It's quite scary at times.
I find that the low level grief is often harder to deal with than the high level grief, the kind of low and high, and that high is, say, crying in your room because you miss them. That at least is cathartic, and you kind of get a release from it, and it feels, you know, like you're giving that person time and reflect and just an outlet. But the low level grief of when you're just when it's not high enough that you can function normally, but it's just on your mind consciously or subconsciously, and it just means like you can't really focus, or you're at the pub with your friends and it's on your mind, and that kind of feeling of feeling like alone in a crowded room, that when it's, and no one else is aware of it, I find, because there's nothing cathartic about it. It's just like really frustrating.
It's just there.
You just want to, you want to just function like, I mean, from my experience, I'm just like, I wish I could just function like my friend. It makes you feel so much more alienated. Like makes you feel like I'm never going to be able to do the things that I used to be able to do when he was alive, because of this devastating reality that I didn't choose to live in. And then that just adds to all the, you know, frustration.
It's just exhausting.
It's exhausting.
That feeling of being alone in a crowded room is exhausting. And as you say, because you're not crying, or you're not visibly angry or visibly sad, like it's almost like it's not obvious to other people.
Yeah.
So it's lonely in the sense that it's still the same grief, and you're still just feeling it the same. You're just feeling it in a slightly different capacity. And then it feels like, I feel like alone in a crowded room, but it's so loud. My grief.
Yeah. And
like around me.
Yeah, because it's all internalized.
Yeah.
I think the way that I've kind of tried to teach myself to deal with that is just by letting someone know in the room. If I can identify it at the time, I'll just say to my friend, like, oh, I'm just having a bit of a moment. And even if they, you know, they can't do anything, and that's fine, but just keeping people in the loop.
Yeah.
But it's so much easier said than done, because bringing it up when it's not
in that sort of environment,
vibe killer. If you're just at the pub with your friends being like, by the way, guys, I'm really struggling.
Yeah.
They'll probably just be like, oh, no, obviously not. But
you'd also probably be surprised that a lot of other people in the room are probably feeling that way. Not necessarily about grief, but about something else.
That's not just applicable to grief. It's so true. It's all sorts of things. But
as you say, telling your friend, it's just like they can just like squeeze your hand.
Yeah, and just check
you just know then you're okay. Then it's you two in this crowded room.
Yeah,
it's not you alone.
Yeah,
I really like that.
Just letting people know.
Yeah,
but it's
easier said than done.
Hard. It's really hard.
It is, especially like if some people in the room don't even know about your loss. Like that's weird.
Yeah.
If it's like a new group or like, that's the thing in like your 20s, like you're constantly meeting new people.
Trying to suss out whether like, do you know?
You kind of know me through this person. Yeah.
I had that last night.
Oh no.
But it was so, they didn't know. But the whole sort of conversation I was trying to suss out, like, because they'd be like, how's your year been? And I was like, okay, you probably really don't know. Or like, because I hadn't seen them in ages.
Oh, right, okay.
I was like, where do I start?
Did you tell them?
I told one of them eventually, because we sat down, because I was driving, and he was like, why are you driving? And then this can get cut out, this is really boring. But I said, I'm going on a podcast tomorrow. And then he said, what podcast? I was like, yeah, just to let you know, I'm about to drop a bit of a bombshell on you.
Yeah,
it's so... this year, and it's about grief. And he was like, oh my God. And he was so lovely. It was really nice.
No, that's so nice. That is something I actually find it hilarious. Like, I can't help it, but
what other people's reaction?
Because when it's not even to like usually it was always when I tell people Matt has passed away. But now it sort of turns out, so what are you doing at the minute, like for work? And obviously I work.
Oh yeah,
wonderful
telling them about the podcast.
And then I'm like, and I'd also like, I've just started a podcast, and everyone gets so excited. So everyone goes like this, it's a podcast, and then they go, that's so exciting, what are you doing? And I'm like,
death.
Yeah. And literally I go,
about death.
So it's a bit of a deep one. I'm actually doing it on like grief and loss for like young people, like surrounding about like death, and they'll all just go, oh, so
sorry.
Oh, who died? Oh. Yeah, stunning.
But do you find it quite a nice way it gives you a reason to bring it into conversation without having to be like, hey guys, just to let you know this happened?
Yeah, like potentially. I think it's like another avenue now for me to share that information, but at the same time, like I still would say it even if they didn't ask.
Yeah.
I'm just very like that. I would rather just
nip it in the bud,
let people know so that they don't then ask me a really painful question later on that I can't be bothered for. And I was telling you I have this thing, because we were talking about how you're obviously saying, like, obviously everyone goes, what does your mum do? What does your dad do? So it's a very quick.
People don't, people don't assume that when you're our age that you've got a dead parent, but like they definitely don't assume about a sibling.
Absolutely not. But then I was like saying, because I never said before, like, it's quite not nice. It's good.
Useful.
It's useful. That's a better word. But it's useful in terms of like, I can kind of control the situation because I'm the youngest. So like, if I don't want to tell someone, because I'm never going to see you again, I don't want to like share this part of my life. You don't need to know this about me. And also, I might be in a bit of a vulnerable, sad moment. I'm just like, I will just cry telling you.
Yeah.
I go through the other two siblings first, and like my sister lives in Australia, and that's usually the point where like we'll
conversations diverted.
But then
Australia.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then sometimes if I do want that person to know, I'll go straight to like, oh well, I have 3 siblings, but I only have 2 now, because I've lost one. I always have 3, but I'm like, I have 2 living. But when sometimes they say 3, everyone goes. Also another thing, people really like dig for that, what that last sibling's doing if I work from the bottom sometimes. And what about your eldest? And I'm like, can you not like
busy? Yeah.
And then it's the worst. I'm like, he's dead. And they're like, oh, I shouldn't have digged. I'm like, no, you shouldn't have. And then it's just a bit awkward. And then we kind of go, I'm going to go get a drink now.
Yeah.
Bye.
Have a good day.
But that is something, I guess, when it's like a close loss to you, it allows it to be quicker added to conversation if you want it to be, I guess. And we're quite similar about that. Of like, I'd just rather most people know. Yeah.
Or not talk about it, but just
make people aware.
Let people.
But then not everyone's like that.
It again, obviously depends who I meet. So sometimes this is really weird. And I know that grief makes you really weird. And like,
I love the word weird because it's so true.
But I don't know if other people get this. I don't know if it's because I'm like, I did languages at uni and care about grammar and whatever. But I have this thing where some people will ask me a question, or like, this is an example. So my parents grew up near Liverpool. So if I meet someone who is Scouse, I'll always say, oh, my parents grew up near Liverpool. And the grammar of that is correct. Like, it's still factually true. Just because my dad's not here anymore doesn't mean that's not true.
Yeah.
So then they listen to that and they're like, oh, cool. And then I know that because I've then brought my parents up, they immediately have an assumption that my dad's alive. And I'm like, you think my dad's alive? Like, I don't know why I like it. I'm like, for one person in my life, my dad's alive. My dad's still alive. I don't know what it is. That might make no sense. But it's...
No, it does.
Instead of being like, my dad used to be a tennis journalist or my dad was this.
He grew up.
It's like he grew up. It's a past tense thing, but it still doesn't directly mean that he's died. But that's probably just a wild... Like, it doesn't obviously
that's a grief brain thing, but
the way that I feel about him being gone. It doesn't make me believe that he's still here. It just...
It's just a
I don't know if anyone else gets that, but I sometimes I'm like, you think he's alive, but he's not.
Small wins.
Yeah.
But it is... I don't think I've actually ever had that. I can understand it,
I think.
But I can't really say, well, yeah, I'm just trying to... No.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had that. I could be like, oh, Matt went to Tiffin, but like...
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't think I've ever had that. But that's in a weird... It's quite like...
I think it's just grief math.
It's a grief...
Is it gamma?
Grief math, grief brain.
Yeah.
I love grief brain. No, I'm joking. I hate her. I hate her. But yeah, I don't think I've ever had that. I'm trying to think like if that's something I really struggled to get past, was being like, oh, my brother was...
Yeah, talking about
the change in grammar.
Yeah. And it's something I still trip up on. And I still speak about them in the present tense.
As you came out of that grief bubble that we talked about, if no one's really sure like grief bubble meaning, I mean, technically it doesn't have a meaning, we're just making it up, but grief bubble is kind of like
just like the
everyone's
initial phase of grief,
flowers, and everyone's in your grief with you.
Yeah, everyone cares as much as you do.
Yeah, in those like first few months, and then they start
off and
they go back to normal life
in the big bad world.
Yeah, love it.
Grief.
How was, if you were to like look back now to then, how was going back? Not, I don't like saying normal life because
again, kind of back to where I'm at with my life, like leaving uni. It very much, I felt like this year in a lot of ways I've just been moving forward because I've finished university, I'm applying to jobs, I'm going traveling, like all of this. So it's not, I guess it's slightly different for me in the sense that I'm not just going back to my 9-to-5 job that I had before. So everything's sort of been changing, and I feel like
you're not going back. You're technically starting anew.
I'm still afresh, and that was something that I felt not lucky, but I felt, I'll just say lucky with, is that it happened in a time where I was in a privileged enough position to still choose kind of the avenue that I wanted my life to go down, and so
space to grieve.
People checking in less, and that it's really hard. And that I've definitely had days where I've been like, why is everyone's life moving on like this? Do they not remember? Do they not care anymore? Obviously, you know that they do, but it's just, you can't resent anyone for not being as attentive in the first few weeks. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely really hard coming out of the grief bubble. But also, like, the real ones, they stay, they hang around, and they know. Like, I just think, as a friend of someone's who's grieving, it's just so the main thing to know. Obviously, you're never going to understand what they're going through, or hopefully, or
I hope you never understand. Kind of.
But also, just have the knowledge that it is something that you will have to be there forever.
Yeah,
and you won't, maybe not in the same capacity, but it's not just something that, goes away after a few months. But again, it's so normal that everyone's, life does move on, life carries on, and it also moves on for you as well. And that, not move, I don't like the phrase move on, just kind of move forward. And that's obviously okay, but naturally you're going to have those days where it feels, grief's not linear, and where it feels like you're back to square one again, and you're feeling that pain as much as you ever did at the beginning, but people aren't there with you. But yeah, it's all about just like reaching out and
I feel like you find your people in grief.
Yeah, definitely. And
it gives you a lot of hindsight and
clarity.
Yeah.
About, the real ones.
I love that. The real ones, they stick around. But it's true. And I feel for this to have happened in like this year for you, in a sense, like could have gone two different ways.
Yeah.
When I kind of look at it now, you've sort of gone like a really positive way with it. Of like, I've had space to grieve, and it's allowed me time. And where do I want to go with life? Because as you said, like it's that pivotal time in your life without the grief, and then the grief added is like another weight, and another confusion. But a lot of people would look at that like, this is so like scary, daunting. I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to do anything. I'm gonna. So and you.
Yeah, I mean, those thoughts definitely, obviously, cross your mind.
And if you had stuck and stayed and gone that way, that's also so fine.
No, completely.
Yeah, if anything, I would have thought that would have been the way. Do you know what I mean? Because it's so.
Yeah, I don't know.
A pivotal time, but.
Yeah, you got to just,
it's nice to look at it.
I guess the way that I felt what was right for me, it was I just needed to like take it on my stride and just keep going, but also making the space for it as well, and the time to talk about it and process it and as much as I can. And that's definitely come with a lot of sacrifices. Like my mum gets really annoyed at me for having a really high social battery, and she's like, just chill out and like take it easy. And you know,
do you find yourself
annoyingly, she is right. I do very much need to do that, and I've got better at it. But yeah, it just kind of, it's just hard, like finding that balance between wanting life to sort of carry on and finding, you know, the good in the things that you used to enjoy before they died, but also creating that new space and understanding that you're not the same person and life is different, and you also have to accommodate that loss and as well. So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty scary, difficult balancing act, but again, it's just one of those. With time, you kind of, with the very minimal hindsight and time that I have had, you do kind of just learn with it. But that's not to say that it gets easier in time and that I'm okay now, but it's a bit more like I just feel generally more established now. Like for so long, it was like I didn't recognize who I was at all. I didn't know. I was so scared. I wasn't sad about the loss because I hadn't processed it. I was more just scared about the future. And I didn't recognize who I was because I was kind of accessing all these tools that I didn't know that I had, and the strength that I'd never seen before.
Because you've never had to use it before.
No, never. And yeah, I mean, I've been so fortunate my whole life. But also at the same time, I didn't remember who I was before grief. So I was I just felt like this alien in this world that I also no longer recognize. But now I feel, you know, this huge, it's really emotional to, you know, acknowledge it, but this sense of self now that I didn't have before. And I'm so glad that I feel that now. And that's not to say, you know, I'm still very early in the journey and it's constantly evolving and stuff. But for so long, I really just didn't recognize who I was, my place in the world I was in. Couldn't remember who I was before. But now I feel much more grounded and better adjusted to it. And yeah, it's a nice, not content because I'm not happy about it, but also like somewhat more satisfied than I was.
Yeah. Like slight peace.
Yeah.
Very slight.
Very slight.
It's like a slither.
Like a tiny bit like that. Yeah. Kind of thing.
If you were to, like, what advice would you give to someone where you were?
Yeah.
Like almost 11 months ago.
Yeah. Oh God. I think it's important to like specify with advice. So So obviously there's not a sort of one size fits all kind of thing. And
Definitely not.
I don't, I'm so new. I don't really feel like I'm in a position to give advice. But if I were to speak to myself,
yeah, that's a nice way to look at it,
11 months ago, and give her advice, and then obviously if that resonates with anyone, that's amazing. I've got 3 things.
Okay.
I'd say, firstly, kind of touched on it before, but just look after yourself. That's something that I got told so much at the beginning, and I just thought, yeah, obviously my dad's just died, but that again, I thought, but I thought that was like doing a face mask and watching a movie, and then fast forward a month, and I like have a child in 4 days, and I can't get off the sofa. I can't hydrate myself because I don't have the energy. Like, when something so tragic happens, life is really stripped back to the fundamentals of what's important. Like, just drinking is so cliche, but just drinking water, eating well, getting fresh air, being with your loved ones and stuff. Like, really, just do that as much as you can. I guess that's the kind of advice that I'd have for myself in the very initial phases as it started all hitting me a lot. And yeah, and I think a big thing for me is going on walks, and because I always feel better like 100% of the time after going on a walk. So it's so much easier said than done sometimes when you are in that state and you can't move because you're so sad or whatever and crying so much. But if you can, just go on a walk and get fresh air and dislodge yourself from that place physically. And if you don't feel better after that walk, resume position and press play on that film and start crying again. But I guarantee you will feel better.
Yeah, I actually can I can second that.
Yeah.
Walks are incredible.
Yeah, a little mental health walk. So great. So yeah, look after yourself, but like in a very literal sense.
Yeah.
Secondly, kind of similar, but just finding an outlet, whatever that is, like whether that is taking up taekwondo or getting therapy or whatever. That was 2 very different things.
Niche.
Yeah,
I love it.
I haven't taken up taekwondo.
I was going to say, is this like a...
yeah, this is hard, Lord.
Yeah.
No. For me, it's writing and journaling like a maniac, and exercise and music and stuff. Like, finding that way to, that something that you like doing, to ground yourself in a time where you feel like you have no idea what way is up or where you are, how you feel or whatever, is so important. And being able to channel your grief through something that works for you, whether that's puzzles or talking to your friends or whatever it is, just finding an outlet, or sport or whatever, finding an outlet and trying to kind of sticking to that when you can, and letting it channel out in a bit more of a measured way through something that you love. Because if you just try, in my experience, just get on with it and ignore it, it will just come and bite you in the bum like way more viciously.
100%.
And giving yourself that time to do that thing that you like makes you feel better, even if you're not really in the mood for it, but it will kind of just keep you a bit more balanced, is my experience. And then the final one that I would say, I don't know if this is advice, but more just a little bit of encouragement, is just don't lose hope. Don't lose hope. That, I think, because death is so final and obviously irreversible, and when you're feeling really in that place where you're feeling that sadness, I've had moments, it feels really hopeless because it's like, well, they're not coming back, therefore I'm going to feel like this forever. But fast forward a week and I'm, laughing with my friends or something. And I think if the only thing that you learn from coming out of a bad patch of grief is the hope and knowledge that you can come out of it, that is enough. And it's so hard finding that perspective when you're in it.
Yeah.
Just knowing that it will pass. You probably will go back into it at some point, and that's okay. But when you do, you have so much more knowledge and evidence that you've got out of it again.
Yeah. And I feel like that's a nice way to look at it, because knowing you can come out of the darkness of grief sort of allows you to go back there.
Yeah, it's
at different
less,
phases of your life, different ages.
it's like less scary.
And as someone like 10 years on, I've definitely learned that. So that piece of advice is incredibly valuable. Just that because you know that, I hate that, it's not light and whatever. It's like, because you know, you allow there to be hope. It allows you to be hopeless as well.
Yeah.
It allows you to have
I know exactly
the sadness, because you know you can at any point bring yourself out slowly.
Yeah. I just think,
I like that.
Don't lose hope. I think sometimes life gets so difficult that the only thing you do have is hope, that it will just not be like this forever. So it's so important that you don't lose that hope. And I promise you, you will smile again, even if you feel like you won't. And you will laugh again. And not like everything will be okay, because it won't be, but you will get through whatever that is. And you look at you like you have got through it, and you should be proud. So yeah, just give my 22-year-old self, give your 13-year-old.
Let's just give them a hug.
Yeah.
I love you.
Yeah. Look after yourself.
I love me now.
Yeah. And so that's probably my three main things. But I mean, obviously
there's 100 million more.
Yeah. It's crazy because I feel like I know I'm so new to it, and I'm probably so naive, and
But what perspectives to already have?
But at the same time, I feel like I've lived 100 lives.
Yeah. I can
imagine. Learned a lot in that time. Yeah. So I guess all I can base it off is kind of, my 11 months, which have felt pretty long, but also
long. Yeah.
I've gone in a flash as well at the same time.
And I just think they're incredible pieces of advice. I think the year you've had has been pretty dark. So to bring hope as one of your advice,
there's been so much light in it as well.
Yeah.
And there've been times where I didn't think that light existed. So that's, I guess, back to that main message.
Yeah. Have hope. Oh, makes me really emotional thinking about it.
Yeah.
But I just think, keep journaling. Ruby's got a blog.
Oh,
you have to go.
Self-prayer.
I read a bit of the poem before. You have to go read it. It's incredible. And it just shows that your outlet is not only an outlet, but potentially like somewhere you could go with it. It is incredible. Oh. And the way you speak and articulate grief as someone who hasn't even reached that 1 year mark is truly an inspiration.
Thank you.
So
set me off.
You should be.
Yeah. Thank you. Just a bit of self-promo.
Yeah.
It's on my Instagram highlights.
It's on mine too.
Oh yeah.
On Lost and Found.
It's called Dadman on my highlights.
Oh, I love that.
So
great name.
If you Ruby Dixon.
Yeah. At Ruby Dixon. You should be.
I've only posted like 3 things as it stands, but
so one of them's a literal poem that like should be famous. Like that needs to be published somewhere.
That is so kind.
Oh no, I'm deadly serious.
Okay.
Hard on pun. But yeah, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so nice.
Just thank you for giving a little bit of hope.
And thank you for your wisdom as well. It's freaking lovely.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Lost and Found with Frankie. If it's resonated with you, or if you've taken something from this episode, or if you've just sat down and enjoyed it, I'd be so grateful if you could rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Hit that follow button, or if you're watching me over on YouTube, please give it a like and subscribe. I really want to reach as many young people and teens who are dealing with grief, as I know firsthand how much hearing conversations like this can help. So if you know someone who could benefit from what we've talked about here today, please give it a share with them too. And come say hello on Instagram and TikTok at Lost and Found with Frankie. So thank you again for being in this space here with me, and I'll see you next time.